Hello everyone, I'm Valerie Gonzalez with AIM Media here at the Monitor Studio. I'm joined by Morgan LaMantia. She's running for State Senate, District 27, and we are doing this in partnership with Futuro RGV, the League of Women's Voters, and McAllen Council Citizens League. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. LaMantia, and we just appreciate your time, and let's get to a couple of questions here. So just tell us, besides the people, what are the greatest asset of your district?
Sure. So first I want to say thank you so much for having me here today and giving me the opportunity to speak to our voters and make sure that they're informed about the different elections going on in our area. So I'm running for State Senate for District 27, and your question acknowledges that our greatest asset is our people. So I would say that our next greatest asset is one that supports our people. And for me, that's our public education system. And for education to work, it requires two components. That's community support and our professional public educators. And we are seeing so much industry growth in our area today. Space exploration, modern agriculture, healthcare, farming, and international trade. What all of these industries have in common is that they required a skilled and educated workforce. And in order to have that, we need to be able to train our students, we need to educate our students, and we need to make sure that when they graduate high school, they're able to take those higher paying jobs right away should they not want to go on to college or higher university, that they're able to break those cycles of intergenerational poverty.
Can you tell us, I think you may have just addressed it, but what are some of the or rather, what is the most important issue facing your district, and how do you plan on addressing it?
So I believe that our biggest challenge is one that relates to our greatest asset. It comes to our education system. It's teacher burnout, it's the learning lag, and it's also the fractionalization that has really infiltrated our politics today. We need people and we need leaders who are going to come together and work to solve problems with common sense solutions. I think one of the first steps we can take is fully fund our public education system, raise our teacher pay, stop the pressure to teach the test, and make sure schools are safe and secure, and that parents and family members have faith and support in the school system.
I know we talked a little about it, but what are your top three priorities if you were to be elected in office?
Right. It's hard to narrow it down to just three with our district needing so much, but I would say public education is top of mind. We need to make sure it's fully funded, and we haven't done that in the state legislature for a very long time. We need to expand Medicaid. Healthcare is so important. Our district, South Texas, we have the highest uninsured rate in the entire country. And the first step we can take to really start to address it is by passing Medicaid expansion. And finally, I would say it's infrastructure and our economy. That means jobs, that's our roadways, that's drainage, and of course, that's fixing and securing our electric grid.
What would be the first piece of legislation that you would sponsor? Do you have something in mind already?
So there's so many different bills, and as I address our top three issues that I'd love to address, there's a million different ways to go about it. But top of mind right now is a bill that Sergio Zarate, with down by the border and down in Cameron County, he tried to push last session with Senator Lucio, but it wasn't able to go through because of the quorum break. What that bill did was that it was going to help our special needs community. So it was going to create these vanity license plates that were color-coded, and it allowed police officers and law enforcement to know when they pulled over a vehicle what the situation they were stepping into, so they were prepared and trained on how to handle those special needs community members. What's even greater about this bill was that it was going to be self-funded, and that the cost to pay for the vanity plates would then go to fund this training with our law enforcement officers.
Okay. Sounds like a helpful bill. Here's something a bit more specific. So during the 87th Texas Legislative regular and special sessions, there was a lot of controversy around SB 1, the bill that made changes to Texas election laws. Republicans argued that SB 1 was needed to ensure the integrity of our elections, while Democrats have countered that the bill is merely a voter suppression bill. What is your position on the 2020 election and on SB 1?
I would not have voted or supported SB 1. I wouldn't support any bill that makes it harder for someone to exercise their right to vote. I believe voting is imperative and that it is a fundamental right. And I agree with John Lewis when he said that voting is sacred, voting is precious, and it is democracy's most valuable nonviolent tool. we need to protect the right to vote. We need to make sure everyone has the ability to exercise that fundamental right. And when we put in place political laws that aren't actually solving problems, we're just putting barriers between our citizens and their exercising their rights. We've seen here in our own backyard that prosecutors have the tools that they need to be able to protect and secure the integrity of our voting system. So this was just a political law aimed at solving a problem that doesn't exist and made it harder for everyone, especially in our community, to go out and vote.
Thank you for clarifying your position. This is another pretty big topic that came out in the last legislative session as well, when they passed a constitutional carry legislation which allows anyone of at least 21 years of age to open carry or concealed carry a firearm in public without needing a special permit or license. What are your thoughts on that piece of legislation?
When we talk about firearms, I think one of the most important people we need to be talking to are our law enforcement officers. Our law enforcement officers are the ones that deal with crimes. They're the ones that come up face to face with people who are armed. And they were incredibly against passing this bill. When we had permit carry, concealed carry, which required permit, everyone had to go through background checks. And there were a number of individuals here in Texas that law enforcement agencies denied those permits because they saw red flags and they did background checks that said they should not be allowed to carry weapons in public. What this law did was negate all of that work, negate every single opinion law enforcement officers gave to our legislators in this Austin, and negate all their efforts to try to protect our community. We need to listen to our law enforcement officers when passing these bills, and this was something that they were very much against.
The next pretty hot topic in the border is border security. Border security has long been a hot topic here and is in D.C. as well. The legislature has approved around $800 million biannually for the past several years to support border security and operations. And Governor Abbott recently announced that the state of Texas was going to be funding a private border wall. What are your thoughts on the current state of the international border, and what kind of policies would you support related to border security?
So for decades, almost a century almost, we've been asking D.C. to have comprehensive immigration reform. I remember my grandfather going up to D.C. talking to legislators about getting comprehensive immigration reform. We're still asking for it, and D.C. still keeps putting us off. And it doesn't matter which party is in power. What we have is we have one side saying there's no problem at the border and ignoring the issue. And we have the other side saying that we live in a third world country and it's a war zone. And neither one of those is the case. Neither one of the parties in power right now are actually talking about reality. That's why it's so important that when we have these conversations, whether in DC or in Austin, we make sure we include border voices so that we understand the real problems that are happening. What are the real solutions? What can actually help everyone here in the border communities? So not having those voices, you end up with two polarized sides, none of which are actually working to solve the problems. So I feel that we need both sides to come together, and we need border voices included in those conversations.
Thank you. The state of Texas does not have a state-specific minimum wage. Would you support creating a state-specific minimum wage?
I believe we do have a minimum wage, though it is very low in comparison to everyone else. And I think we should increase it, but I don't think it should be a jump, where a lot of people are talking about jumping it to $15 an hour, whereas now it's around $7.25. Jumping from one extreme to the next is going to hurt the economy and hurt a lot of our small business owners. We need to progressively go in that direction. But what's great is down here in South Texas, we're actually seeing the economy move in that direction naturally without having state regulation to push it that way. A lot of our farms are offering $20 an hour for people to come and help. They're still having problems finding people to fill those roles. So we need help, it's not just raising the minimum wage. There's a lot more that needs to go into solving those problems and making sure that people are getting the wages that they deserve.
That kind of ties into the next question. Our state and nation is plagued by labor shortages. Why do you think this is, and what policies would you support to address these shortages?
Right. Everywhere you go, you see a help wanted sign. And like I said, we have farmers that are paying $20 an hour, and yet they can't find anyone to fill those roles. For a long time, it was due to the low wages. But we're seeing that even with people raising wages, it's still an issue. for instance, at our company, we decided to really tackle our benefits, our healthcare benefits and our retirement benefits, and make sure that those were benefits that would help attract workers and make sure that they were affordable and really offered everything that they needed. But we're still having those issues across the board. One big solution we could do is, like we said earlier, is comprehensive immigration reform. Allow for more work visas. Allow for people to come over here and work and go back home or send money back home to where they need to go. That's how our community and our economy has always worked. And right now it's kind of being shut down, and we need to find a solution.
And that kind of labor shortages also kind of expand to the educational system. There's a lot of teachers who are leaving the profession, especially after COVID kind of stressed them out and exacerbated some problems that were already there. If you were elected, what would you do to address teachers' concerns and ensure that our schools have enough teachers to provide education for our children?
So a lot of people immediately say that we're losing teachers because they're not being paid enough. That's part of it, but that's not the entire problem. Our teachers feel attacked every day when they're going into school. We're seeing the state legislature and the news going after our teachers and villainizing them when they are part of our community. They went above and beyond for us during the pandemic. South Texas was voted one of the most pandemic resilient school districts because of the way the teachers really went out there and made sure that not only students were aware of what was happening, but involved the parents in those conversations as well. They're part of our family unit. They're part of our system to raise our kids. We need to support our teachers. We need to make sure that they understand that we respect them and that we have their backs. We also need to make sure that we reduce the pressure to teach through the test. Our teachers right now feel that all they have is the ability, they're just being forced to teach the test and aren't being able to teach our kids problem solving and really enjoy their profession. So we need to go back to that. We need to make sure our kids have those problem solving skills so they can get those higher paying jobs.
In the last, or rather one and only debate that we had for Governor, Beto O'Rourke said that he was in favor of removing STAR. Do you think that's a good idea? Would you support that kind of policy?
I don't think we should remove the STAR test completely. It's a subjective test, but it shouldn't be used as a carrot or a stick. It should be used as a benchmark to see where we are and how we're improving. The way schools get paid is completely dependent on their value or their scores as a STAR test, and I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think it is a tool that is useful and we should continue to use, but it shouldn't be the end-all be-all when we're evaluating schools. We should look at many other aspects. For instance, when kids apply for college, it's not just their SAT or ACT. Even some Ivy Leagues stopped looking at those standardized testing scores. It's about the entire person, and we need to look at schools the same way. It's about everything that they offer and everything that they're teaching our kids.
Speaking of higher education, those prices continue to go up. Texas A&M Board of Regents approved a 2.1% increase last year, however none for this year. If elected, what would your plan be to address the increasing costs for higher education?
I've spoken to a lot of our higher education leaders, and what they've told me is that the reason why tuition keeps going up is because our state legislature has never fully funded our higher education budget. If we were to fully fund our higher education budget, you would not see tuition increases going up each year. The other thing is that UTRGV down here in the Valley has done amazing work in that they are increasing how many students can go and not have to pay tuition. I believe right now, if you have an income less than $100,000, you qualify for one of their programs so you don't have to pay tuition. They also have a program that allows for, once you graduate, if you stay in the Rio Grande Valley for up to 3 years, your debt will be forgiven. And that's a way to keep our educated students here, to keep our families here, and keep growing our economy. And I think those are innovative practices that we should support.
The other question, also dealing with education, I think you kind of hinted at it earlier, but last year the governor signed a controversial bill that prescribes how Texas teachers can talk about current events and America's history of racism in the classroom, critical race theory. His signature makes Texas one of the handful of states across the country that have passed such legislation, which aims to ban this type of critical race theory in K-12 public school classrooms. What are your thoughts on critical race theory and the bill signed by Governor Abbott?
So I've spoken with students, I've spoken with parents, I've spoken with teachers, superintendents, and school boards all throughout District 27. And I have yet to find a single person who has actually seen or heard of evidence where they are teaching critical race theory in our classrooms. It's currently not being taught. It's a political issue. It is part of the reason why teachers feel so threatened and feel that they're being attacked, because it's the legislature, it's our government getting involved in our classroom at the lowest level. We shouldn't be a top-down approach. It should be a down-up. Our teachers should be allowed to teach in the classroom according to the facts, according to our history books, the reality of what's going on. And creating issues like this in the media do nothing but grab headlines and create problems more than they solve.
We talked a little about this as well, the uninsured rate. You mentioned that we're one of the highest, and we are the highest uninsured in the country with 18.4. That's almost twice the national average. Over 5 million here in Texas are uninsured. If elected, what would you do to address the state of Texas high uninsured rates?
We need to expand Medicaid. Expanding Medicaid is going to be our greatest battle against those high uninsured rates. Without insurance, what's happening is that people don't have the money, the funds, or the ability to get preventive care, to get ahead of a problem, to go see a doctor when they need to go see a doctor. What happens then is that they wait to the last moment when it becomes an emergency, and they go to our emergency rooms in hospitals, and those are one of the highest bills that they're battling. And then we have uncompensated care that our state is funding. What that means is that we are leaving billions of dollars on the table at the federal government that we could be using here in our district, and our state could be using. And if we alleviate a lot of the pressure of paying those uncompensated care prices at the state level, we'll now have more money to help with property taxes and more money to help with our public education, whether that's at the college level or K through 12 level. So expanding Medicaid is one of the first steps we should be taking to fight those issues of high rates of uninsured.
Staying with that topic, and now addressing reproductive rights, Senator Eddie Lucio of District 27, a Democrat, voted in favor of the heartbeat bill passed in the last legislative session, which restricted abortions so long as a heartbeat is detected and created a private rights of action against healthcare providers and anyone providing assistance in the abortion. How would you have voted, and what are your thoughts on this bill?
So I wouldn't have voted in favor of this bill. I think it turned community members into vigilantes who were going after women who are already in a very vulnerable state. But beyond that, now we have the overturning of Roe versus Wade and the trigger law that went into effect in Texas, basically eliminating any ability to get an abortion. And most Texans and most people here in District 27 agree that trigger law has gone too far. It has no exception for rape or incest. It has no exception for if a woman is going to have severe complications, and it doesn't have an age limit or an exception. Our doctors and medical professionals have said that a girl between the ages of 10 or 12 who gets pregnant and gives birth will have long-term health concerns related to that. These are issues that need to be addressed, and our doctors shouldn't wait until a woman is at the point of life or death before they're able to perform medically necessary procedures like an abortion if it's to save their life or save their ability to have children going on in the future.
The next question deals a little bit with labor shortages, but now in hospitals. So our nation faces a severe nursing shortage, which has been exacerbated by COVID-19. It is estimated that 1 in 4 nurses are retiring or taking time off due to burnout. Hospitals are struggling to staff COVID-19 units and to provide care to routine health issues like heart attacks, car accidents, and elective surgeries. If elected, what is your plan to address the nursing shortage here in the state?
So we have some great schools here in South Texas that are producing skilled and educated nurses, but a lot of them are leaving. We need to make sure that our hospitals and we have the ability to hire those nurses, and we produce more of those nurses to fill those roles, and we are paying our nurses what they deserve. The other thing is that a big reason why a lot of the emergency rooms are so overcrowded is because we don't have Medicaid expansion. Our community members aren't able to get preventive care. And like I said earlier, what happens then is that they wait till it becomes an emergency, and we have the overclogged emergency rooms. So the solution isn't more emergency rooms, but it's more access to doctors, more access to specialists, more access to preventive care. And when it comes to nurses, we need to make sure that we are fully funding our programs that educate and train our nurses. And the shortage of nurses isn't just happening at our hospitals, but we're seeing it also in our nursing homes as well, across the board.
Thank you so much. In last year, the U.S. inflation rate was approximately 7%, which affects the cost of everything from food and clothing to housing and rent. It was 8.5 actually last month, down from a 40-year high of 9.1 in June. What can the Texas legislature do to mitigate the impact of inflation on residents? And if elected, what will you do to address inflation here?
So clearly prices are rising, and many families are feeling the impact of that. And we need to do whatever we can to fight the effects of inflation. But one of the best opportunities that we have to fight inflation is to create more high-paying jobs and allow for more opportunities for growth. If we train our workforce and if we educate our kids and we bring down those opportunities, we can have so many more people in our economy having those higher paying jobs. And with that, they're going to be able to weather the ups and downs of our economy much better. And I believe that's our best solution.
The next question here is just about politics in general. It seems like almost every issue has become politicized. The 87th legislature was one of the most acrimonious in recent history. What do you think about the current state of our politics, and how would you work to lower the temperature per se?
Right. Yes. I believe politics become incredibly fractionalized. And you're right, it is becoming polarized, and everything becomes red or blue issue. Really what we need are leaders that are going to come together and work to solve these problems, find common sense solutions to the problems, are willing to reach across the aisle to work for our working families out there. So the best thing we can do is make sure that we go out and we vote, we make sure our voices are heard, and we elect leaders who value hard work, who value compromise, who are willing to find solutions with people they may disagree with on other issues, but at the end of the day, make sure that we put our working families first.
And I understand some issues are a little easier to find some common ground than others. What do you believe are some of those issues that Republicans and Democrats in the state have in common that you could possibly address as soon as a new session starts?
Well, one of the first ones that comes to mind is there's a piece of Medicaid expansion that we can do this next session. Speaker Phelan, who's a Republican, has spoken in support of, and that is extending Medicaid coverage for pregnant women 12 months after giving birth. Right now it's at 6. So that's one step we can all take to work together to help women who are giving birth and growing our families. The other thing is infrastructure. We very much agree on the fact that we need more infrastructure and growing our business. Both the governor and lieutenant governor have come out in support of the second causeway. And with that second causeway comes drainage and infrastructure that will affect Hidalgo, Cameron, and Willacy County. So those are just some aspects. And then, of course, businesses, job growth, economy growth. I know we agree with many of Republicans on those aspects.
Thank you so much. I guess this is just kind of going back to education opportunities here in the Valley, but would you support the creation of a law school here in the RGV?
I would love to have a law school here in the RGV. I went to law school and I had to leave to San Antonio to attend law school. If I had the ability to attend law school here in South Texas, I very much would do that. So I would love to have law school down here. And we saw that when we tried to get a medical school, we had to fight. And it took years for our senators to get that accomplished. And I'm willing to join that fight for our law school and get it down here so that more people in our community have that opportunity.
Thank you. Would you also support the establishment of a veterans hospital in the Valley?
Very much so. Our veterans need a lot of help here in the Valley. We need to expand our services. And we have some services in in Harlingen and McAllen. We need to expand those services in Brownsville as well and look at Willacy County. And having a veterans hospital will be a great asset for our veterans down here.
Just the last question here. We already talked a little about this, but the nation has become very fractured, very polarized, dividing a lot of Americans, talking about succession along political lines or even a civil war. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you propose that we kind of work to lessen that type of tension?
I think we need to just be open and honest about the issues. We need to go out and talk to as many people as possible. That's one of the things I found in my campaign, is going out and speaking with people who don't agree with me on certain issues, but finding common ground and having those open conversations and leaving that conversation not angry or upset, but understanding that we are always open for other opinions. And this district is so diverse and has so many diverse opinions. And being able to talk to so many people with different backgrounds has made me a better person and a better legislator if I were to win. But it allows me to represent that diversity. And that's what we need. We need to accept opinions, accept when we disagree, and find other ways where we can come together and agree.
Well, that was my last question. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone for tuning in. Thank you to Futuro RGV, League of Women's Voters, and McAllen Citizens League for allowing us to do this.